Chapter 1409. Listening to Yuan Shaman's words, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty all showed a refreshed smile. The things that Wu Yuexin had done before had already made them unable to bear it. They wanted to clean up Wu Yuexin, but they didn't expect Imo Yinjue to be so domineering. He directly destroyed Wu Yuexin's dantian. Now Wu Yuexin was a waste, and she had no ability at all. Xia Jiqing looked at Wu Yuexin coldly. Damn Wu Yuexin, she dared to say that about her and her boss. Now she also wanted to let Wu Yuexin taste the pain. Feeling Xia Jiqing's gaze, Wu Yuexin couldn't help but shudder. When she thought of all the things she had done before, she knew that Xia Jiqing would never let her go easily. As a result, she could almost imagine her next ending. Han Xiling and others obviously didn't expect Imo Yinjue to be so swift and decisive. It was just one move and they lost one of their combat power. At this moment, Han Xiling and the others had a bad premonition. When Imo Yinjue made a move, they didn't even feel the fluctuation of Imo Yinjue's ability. This alone was enough to prove the strength of Imo Yinjue. They had found a strong opponent. Han Xiling glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang. She didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so capable. She could find such a powerful helper in the small world. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Xiling's constantly changing expression. With a wave of her right hand, a silver needle quickly shot out. Han Xiling didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to suddenly use a silver needle. With a careless move, the silver needle pierced her throat again. Feeling the existence of this silver needle, Han Xiling didn't dare to pull it out like last time. If something went wrong, she couldn't bear it. Before you die, if you have anything to say, then say it. Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips curved into a mocking smile. Today, she would definitely not give Han Xiling the chance to escape. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Han Xiling was stunned and immediately tried to speak. Bailey Hongzhuang. After not speaking for a long time, Han Xiling's voice was hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. When she opened her mouth, even she couldn't help but frown. However, after discovering that he could speak again, Han Xiling couldn't help but rejoice. This at least proved that she hadn't really become a mute. Bailey Hongzhuang, I will cut you into 1,000 pieces today. Very quickly, Han Xiling got used to speaking and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of hatred. Thinking about the humiliation she had suffered these days, she felt that even if she cut Bailey Hongzhuang into 1,000 pieces, it wouldn't be enough to vent her anger. I'm afraid you don't have the ability to do so. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. Her right hand gripped the glazed sword tightly and a murderous aura spread out. You think too highly of yourself. Han Xiling laughed coldly, your ability has indeed improved very quickly. However, you're now at orange level 5 and I'm already at orange level 7. What do you have to compete with me? The difference of 2 levels was enough for her to crush Bailey Hongzhuang. Then let's try. Bailey Hongzhuang said nonchalantly. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's calm expression, Han Xiling's gaze sharpened. Don't think that your little tricks can fool everyone. Chapter 1410. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Xiling, speechless. Han Xiling seemed to treat these groundless accusations as the truth. Now Han Xiling was making such a solemn vow, as if she had suffered a great grievance. It was really funny. Do whatever you want. Bailey Hongzhuang rolled her eyes. She raised her azure glazed sword with her right hand and the primary force in her body surged. Han Xiling was not slow either. A green sword appeared in her hand. She leaped forward and pierced her sword towards Bailey Hongzhuang with a sharp sword aura. Clang! Bailey Hongzhuang countered with her azure glazed sword at the same time. The old and new grudges between the two of them could not be resolved. At this moment, each of their attacks was ruthless. They wanted to kill each other in one move. Clang! 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 The crowd saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling turning into 2 whirlwinds. The green and white figures were entangled with each other and it was hard to tell them apart. Sharp sword chi and bursting sparks continued to spread out and cracks appeared on the ground around them. The cultivators who were watching the battle quickly retreated and distanced themselves when they saw the battle. However, they did not expect the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling to be so intense. Even though they were spectators, they could feel how powerful that sharp sword qi was. I did not expect these two ladies to be so powerful. This is surprising. Looks like this is going to be a fierce battle. Bailey Hongzhuang is only at orange level rank 5 while Han Xiling is at orange level rank 7. Why is it that Bailey Hongzhuang is not at a disadvantage when they are fighting? When Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling revealed their abilities, they already knew the difference in their abilities. However, they did not expect the battle to be so different from what they had imagined. When Han Xiling was fighting with Bailey Hongzhuang, there was a strong shock in her heart. Her clear eyes were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang, and she did not understand. This was her first real battle with Bailey Hongzhuang. With Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation base, it was impossible for her to fight with Han Xiling for so long without showing any signs of defeat. If she was an ordinary cultivator, it would be fine. However, cultivators who did not come from a good background would not be strong enough even if they raised their cultivation base. As for Han Xiling, she grew up in Tiangang's sect and her grandfather had generously given her good cultivation resources. Even cultivators of the same level would not be able to hold on for so long. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was clearly weaker than Han Xiling. It was unbelievable that she could still hold on. If Bailey Hongzhuang knew about Han Xiling's thoughts, she would not be bothered. Han Xiling had only grown up in Tiangang's sect while she was the head of the Bailey family in her previous life. With two different identities, it was easy to tell who had the higher status between them. The martial arts techniques and techniques that she had mastered were more powerful than Han Xiling's. Thud thud thud. In the next moment, the two figures that had been tightly entwined suddenly separated. Bailey Hongzhuang had to admit that Han Xiling's abilities were real. She was not weak at all. Therefore, it would not be easy to defeat Han Xiling in a short period of time. However, she believed that she would defeat Han Xiling in the end. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were fighting, the battle between the Qinrun dynasty and the Myriad Cloud dynasty had also begun. Chapter 14:11. Mo Yinjue's move to defeat Wu Yuexin also had a certain impact on Dong Hongyun and the others of the Qinrun dynasty. Although Wu Yuexin's strength was not strong, Mo Yinjue was able to defeat him in one move, which was enough to prove that his strength was not simple. On the other hand, Pan Zimo and the others could not help but breathe a sigh of relief after seeing this scene. Mo Yinjue's strength was still very trustworthy. Xia Jiqing's group of 6, as well as Xiao He and Xiao Bai, were in full swing with their opponents. The disparity between them had now been quickly narrowed, and with Xiao He and Xiao Bai's help, their battle had become a lot easier. Boom! Ding ding ding! Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling did not retreat, and their fighting power fully erupted. In the process of the long swords being constantly entangled, the swords in their hands flew to the ground. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling looked at each other, and the fierceness in their eyes increased. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's figure took a few steps back, and the spirit energy in her body roared out crazily, continuously pouring into her hands. Immediately afterward, her palms turned, and a complex seal quietly appeared, and the fluctuations of energy quietly spread out. At the same time as Bailey Hongzhuang's movements, Han Xiling also began to use his martial arts. She absolutely could not let Bailey Hongzhuang have a chance to improve, and an indescribable sense of urgency suppressed her chest. If she let Bailey Hongzhuang continue to grow, maybe the next time they meet, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength would really be stronger than her. When she thought of this, the killing intent in her heart became stronger. She must take this opportunity to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. Sacred Azure Flame Palm. Bailey Hongzhuang shouted coldly in her heart, and a huge cyan palm appeared in midair. After using the Sacred Azure Flame Palm several times, Bailey Hongzhuang was now more and more proficient in it, and there was no difficulty and obstruction like before. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not stop because of this. Her hand seals changed, and the huge cyan palm began to shrink rapidly. She never underestimated Han Shiling's idea. Han Shiling, as the representative of Tiangang's sect, was extremely famous, and naturally had a certain ability. Therefore, she needed to be more careful when competing with Han Shiling. When the onlookers saw Bailey Hongzhuang display such a move, their eyes showed a strange look. Bailey Hongzhuang's move. This move was not simple. When Xianyuan Huan and Bailey Haoshuan saw Bailey Hongzhuang's move, they were even more shocked. Although they had already expected Bailey Hongzhuang to be powerful, they did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so powerful. The ability of an Orange Realm level 5 was far beyond their expectations. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's combat power was comparable to an Orange Realm level 7 cultivator? When they thought about themselves, the gap between them was really shocking. When the power of Bailey Hongzhuang's martial skill spread, Han Shiling also displayed his martial skill. 9 Dark Phoenix Finger. As Han Shiling's voice fell, a huge finger that was more than 10 feet long appeared in midair. Fine veined patterns covered the thick fingers, and a terrifying energy was transmitted from the fingers, causing people's hearts to palpitate. However, many of the cultivators stared at the finger, and their expressions changed. Chapter 14:12. 9 Dark Phoenix Finger. Isn't this the unique skill of Tiangang's sect for women? A cultivator's face was filled with shock as he asked doubtfully. Tiangang's sect, for many cultivators, was a sect that they yearned for. Some of the cultivators present came to participate in the assessment competition in order to become a cultivator of Tiangang's sect. Therefore, they also had some understanding of the unique skills of Tiangang's sect. When the man mentioned the origin of the 9 Nether Phoenix Finger, the other cultivators reacted one after another. I say, why do I feel that Han Shiling's name is very familiar? She shouldn't be Han Shiling of Tiangang's sect, right? Another cultivator wondered. When he said this sentence, he also had a feeling of disbelief in his heart. After all, the distance between Han Shiling and them was too big. They never thought that Han Shiling would appear in front of them. What's more, with Han Shiling's identity, there was no need to participate in the assessment competition, so no one thought in this direction. After this man's reminder, the other cultivators' faces changed. They didn't think in this direction before, and they didn't care. Now that they thought about it carefully, all of this was really possible. My God! It turned out to be Han Shiling. This Bailey Hongzhuang is really dead. Offending Han Shiling is simply a death sentence. Xia Jiqing only wanted to refute after hearing the conversation of this group of cultivators. Her boss was the wife of the young master of Tiangang's sect. Her identity was even better than Han Shiling. However, after thinking about it for a moment, Xia Jiqing still didn't say it. After all, this identity should be announced by the boss herself. The most important thing was that although Tiangang's sect knew the identity of the boss and Bewitching didn't hold a wedding in Tiangang's sect. Now, many cultivators wouldn't believe it. After Han Shiling heard the appreciation and admiration of a group of cultivators, a thick smile appeared on her face. This was the aura that belonged to her. On the other side, after knowing the identity of Han Shiling, Dong Hongyun and Pan Zimo, who were fighting on the other side, suddenly changed their faces and their movements paused for a moment. Dong Hongyun was slightly stunned, but then he showed a proud smile. Pan Zimo, you are now an enemy of Han Shiling. I think you have no hope of joining Tiangang's sect in the future. Dong Hongyun sneered. He and Pan Zimo were rivals for a long time, so he knew Pan Zimo's situation very well. Pan Zimo had always wanted to join the Tiangang's sect. With his strength, as long as he performed well in this assessment competition, it was very possible. However, after such a thing happened, Pan Zimo no longer had any chance. As soon as he thought of it, Dong Hongyun felt very happy. Pan Zimo's face immediately became ugly. If he knew that the opponent was Han Shiling of Tiangang Zone, he would never be an enemy. However, things had developed to this point. Even if he wanted to regret, there was no use. Pan Zimo's heart was bitter. He couldn't help but look at Imo Yinjue. If Imo Yinjue wasn't here, he wouldn't choose to continue this battle. Taking advantage of Pan Zimo's distraction, Dong Hongyun stabbed Pan Zimo's heart. Pan Zimo only felt a pain in his chest. When he reacted, it was too late. Chapter 14-13. Mo Yinjue pulled Pan Zimo to his side with one hand. His long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly as his expression revealed a sense of impatience. Pan Zimo was still in a state of shock. Only when Mo Yinjue pulled him back did he realize that his chest was only injured. Because Mo Yinjue had acted in time, he did not lose his life. If you don't have the heart to fight, I can save you once, but I won't save you twice. Mo Yinjue was slightly cold. His eyes were as deep as a black hole and did not contain the slightest bit of warmth. Looking at Mo Yinjue's deep and cold gaze, Pan Zimo could not help but shiver. Only then did he regain his senses and immediately nodded, "I understand." Seeing this, Mo Yinjue patted Pan Zimo's shoulder and his voice slowly traveled into Pan Zimo's ears. Bailey Hongzhuang is the wife of Tiangang sect's young sect master. It's just a Han Shiling, what are you afraid of? The contemptuous and disdainful tone fully proved Mo Yinjue's disdain for Han Shiling. If Hongzhuang had not wanted to personally deal with Han Shiling, he would have crippled Han Shiling long ago. Pan Zimo, who was still immersed in his own sorrow, was stunned when he heard Mo Yinjue's words. When he came back to his senses, an incredulous look appeared on his face. Gulp. Pan Zimo swallowed a mouthful of saliva. When he found out about Han Shiling's identity, it was enough to shock him. Now that he knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, he only felt that it was unbelievable. However, after thinking about it carefully, a woman who had such a deep grudge with Han Shiling should have an existence similar to Han Shiling. Just from the previous conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, he could understand that the conflict between the two was not something that had happened overnight. Everyone knew that Han Shiling liked Tiangang sect's young sect master, and many cultivators believed that Han Shiling was the future young sect master's wife. If Bailey Hongzhuang was the person that young sect master liked, then everything could be linked together. Once he thought of this, Pan Zimo's entire body was energized. Han Shiling was just a cultivator of Tiangang's sect while Bailey Hongzhuang was young sect master's wife. He believed that Mo Yinjue would definitely not deceive him on this matter. As a result, Han Shiling and Bailey Hongzhuang, whose identity was more honorable, could be said to be clear. Dong Hongyun only saw Pan Zimo's figure recover in a short period of time. Although he heard Mo Yinjue's words, he did not hear what Mo Yinjue said clearly. What kind of words could restore Pan Zimo's spirit in such a short time? Dong Hongyun could not understand. Pan Zimo walked in front of Dong Hongyun once again as his handsome face was filled with ridicule. "Dong Hongyun, you're dead meat." Looking at Pan Zimo's huge change, Dong Hongyun frowned. "Pan Zimo, what did Mo Yinjue say to you earlier?" Pan Zimo looked at Dong Hongyun indifferently and replied coldly, "You don't need to know." Seeing Pan Zimo's arrogant attitude, Dong Hongyun's heart was filled with anger as the sharp sword in his hand attacked Pan Zimo once again. Since Pan Zimo said it, he would hit Pan Zimo until he said it. After Pan Zimo knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was Tiangang sect's young sect master's wife, he seemed to have been injected with chicken blood as his sharp sword fiercely pierced forward. Dong Hongyun actually took advantage of his dazed state to injure him, so he would definitely not let Dong Hongyun have a good time. Chapter 14-14. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Shiling's 9 dark phoenix finger as ripples appeared in her cold and moving phoenix eyes. Just from this energy fluctuation, she could feel the power of this 9 dark phoenix finger. She was afraid that it was even stronger than the strengthened green flame's sacred palm by a level. If these two martial skills were to collide, she would probably lose. Han Shiling's face broke into a pleased smile. Even in the previous exchange, Bailey Hongzhuang's battle power was on par with hers. However, once she used her martial skill, Bailey Hongzhuang's background would make her martial skill's power incomparable to hers. The 9 dark phoenix finger was an extremely famous female martial skill in Tiangang's sect. However, it was extremely difficult to cultivate and most cultivators would not be able to cultivate it. With the status of the 9 Dark Phoenix Finger in Tiangang's sect, there were not many cultivators who had the opportunity to learn it. Furthermore, the difficulty of learning the 9 Dark Phoenix Finger was so high that most cultivators would not be able to cultivate it successfully. She had always been proud of her success in cultivating the 9 Dark Phoenix Finger. On this point, even the sect leader had praised her for her outstanding talent. Today, she had used this move in order to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang in one fell swoop. She wanted to let Bailey Hongzhuang know how big the gap between their abilities was. Even if she had to kill Bailey Hongzhuang today, she wanted to let Bailey Hongzhuang understand the huge gap between them before she died. Bailey Hongzhuang is going to be miserable this time. How powerful is the 9 Dark Phoenix Finger? Most martial skills simply cannot be compared to it. Her opponent is Han Xiling. No matter how hard Bailey Hongzhuang tries, it's only a last-ditch struggle. This time, she's dead for sure. Sigh, such a beautiful lady is going to die here. It's really a pity. Some of the men present looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's flower-like and jade-like face and the sorrow in their hearts gradually deepened. If it were them, they would not have the heart to be so ruthless. Bailey Hongzhuang, you will die today. Han Xiling glared coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. From the moment Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, her originally carefree days had become a lot more troublesome. Big Brother D was originally destined to be her man, but Bailey Hongzhuang actually tried to steal her man. Most importantly, Big Brother D was always protecting Bailey Hongzhuang, which made her even more unhappy. She had never thought that Big Brother D would treat her like this for a woman. She had never seen Brother D's cold and merciless gaze before, and it was all because of Bailey Hongzhuang. Today, she was finally going to get rid of Bailey Hongzhuang, this stumbling block. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel happy. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was gone, Brother D would definitely become her man. Only she was fit to become the wife of the young sect master of the Tiangang sect. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix-like eyes narrowed at the sight of Han Xiling's triumphant look. Under these circumstances, she could only give it her all. In this world, there are always many unexpected things that happen. Bailey Hongzhuang was not afraid because of the situation before her. This was going to be a fierce battle, but no one would know the result until the end. Han Xiling laughed icily, "You sure are confident. I'd like to see if you'll still be so confident when you die." Chapter 14-15. Seeing Han Xiling's move, Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were not slow at all, and the Azure Flame's sacred palm quickly won. Boom! The two attacks collided with a loud bang, and an earth-shattering collision sound rang out in the air. Every cultivator present felt a roar in their ears. They swiftly unleashed their essence force to resist the shockwaves that spread out. Their figures rapidly retreated as they watched the battle from afar. Everyone only saw the huge finger and the cyan palm colliding together. Just the difference in size made people feel that Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely lose. Sure enough, after the cyan palm collided with the finger for a while, the energy was gradually worn out by the huge finger. A spiderweb-like crack appeared in the center of the cyan palm, and then, dense cracks quietly appeared. Finally, the cyan palm shattered and disappeared in midair. On the other hand, there were only a few more cracks on the huge palm, but it did not have much impact. At this moment, it was fiercely crushing towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Everyone was secretly speechless. If this finger fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, then Bailey Hongzhuang would be crushed into minced meat. After seeing this scene, Xia Jiqing and the others' faces were filled with worry. They did not expect Han Xiling's strength to be so strong. The power of this kind of martial arts made people feel irresistible from the bottom of their hearts. Boss is in danger. Xia Jiqing's face was full of worry, but in this situation, she could not go over. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's critical situation, Mo Yinjue's black pupils were also filled with a touch of worry. His figure rushed, and immediately wanted to help Bailey Hongzhuang resist everything. However, at this moment, a tyrannical aura once again spread from Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Mysterious sky glass sword. Bailey Hongzhuang once again shouted coldly, and a huge and fierce sword slowly emerged from midair. The glass sword, which was completely condensed by Yuanli, released a powerful energy fluctuation as soon as it appeared. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hesitate to let the mysterious sky glass sword meet it. She knew that the power of Han Shiling's 9-in Dark Phoenix Finger was great. She could only block this 9-in Dark Phoenix Finger by using 2 martial arts in succession. After Mo Yinjue saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to cast another martial skill at such a fast speed, his original choice was also put down. He could feel the power of Bailey Hongzhuang's martial art, and it should not be life-threatening. This was a battle between the two women, and he wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to solve all this by herself. There were many things that could only be done with one's own hands. Boom! The dark sky-colored glazed sword met the mysterious and ancient giant finger in midair. At the moment of the collision, it was as if thunder from the 9th heaven resounded. A ripple of Yuanli visible to the naked eye spread out, and an astonishing power broke out. The abnormal and astonishing fluctuations spread quickly. After feeling such a terrifying fluctuation, the cultivators all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing in horror. No one thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing's fighting power would be so terrifying. If it were them, they would only die under such an attack. Chapter 14-16. Not only was the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling so terrifying, but the battle between the cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty and the Wanyan dynasty was also extremely powerful. For a time, the area within 100 miles seemed to have become a huge battlefield. Smoke and dust rose everywhere, sand flew all over the sky, and energy ripples continued to spread. The destructive power was extremely astonishing. Everyone looked at this scene in amazement. This was the battle between the teams of large dynasties. The power was really terrifying. Not to mention the large dynasties, just the combat power of the two medium-sized teams of Han Shiling and Bailey Hongzhuang was enough to amaze people. Bailey Haoshuan and Shenyuan Huan were in the crowd. Looking at the smoke-filled battlefield, their eyes were filled with horror. After seeing the strength displayed by Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Haoshuan didn't know what to say. In just over a year, Bailey Hongzhuang's progress was so terrifying. Most importantly, he heard that Han Shiling was an extraordinary figure in Tiangang's sect. Bailey Hongzhuang actually dared to be enemies with Han Shiling. Wasn't this courting death? Shenyuan Huan could only remain silent at this moment. Under such a terrifying energy collision, only death would await him if he participated. As the smoke and dust gradually dissipated, the figures of Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling were revealed in everyone's sight. However, compared to the two beauties before the battle, Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling were a bit embarrassed at this moment. Han Shiling's cyan clothes were stained with blood at this moment, her beautiful hair was a bit messy, and her delicate and beautiful face was pale. Obviously, the battle just now consumed a lot of her strength. Bailey Hongzhuang's situation was no better than Han Shiling's. It was even a bit more serious. An enchanting flower of blood blossomed on her white dress. On her shoulder, blood continuously flowed out from the wound, dyeing the shoulder of her clothes red. Her exquisite jade-like face was indescribably pale, but her pair of ink-black phoenix eyes still flickered with a determined and fearless light. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling took out medicinal pills from their qiankuan bags almost at the same time, and quickly swallowed them. Bailey Hongzhuang took qi recovery pills and healing pills at the same time. That collision earlier had consumed a great deal of her origin energy. Not only that, there were already considerable injuries within her body, and her internal organs had suffered a shock. She had no choice but to admit that the might of the Heavenly Dipper sect's martial techniques was truly not simple. The might of this 9-in Nether Phoenix Finger far surpassed martial techniques of the same level. Han Shiling saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was still able to withstand that attack, and his pretty face couldn't help but be filled with dissatisfaction. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was so tenacious that she was still alive? Bailey Hongzhuang, even if you dodged that attack just now, you will still die in my hands. Han Shiling's gaze was cold, and his pretty face was filled with malevolence and resentment. The better Bailey Hongzhuang performed, the stronger the anger in his heart. Faced with Han Shiling's cold gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a cold smile, and such a smile bloomed on her pale face, adding a bit of weakness and poignant beauty. Mo Yinjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, and his figure flashed, and directly appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Leave the rest to me. Chapter 14-17. Following Mo Yinjue's words, Han Shiling's expression turned even uglier. Compared to Mo Yinjue's powerful battle prowess, she had already sustained some injuries from her fight with Bailey Hongzhuang. If she were to continue fighting with Bailey Hongzhuang, she believed that she would definitely be able to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. However, once Mo Yinjue made his move, she would be dead meat. Just by looking at Mo Yinjue's previous attacks, she could tell that Mo Yinjue was extremely powerful. Thinking of this, Han Shiling's gaze fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, this is a battle between you and me. Didn't you say that you weren't afraid of me? Now you're asking a man to make a move, what kind of skill is that? Han Shiling pretended to be calm as she looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. However, her eyes were filled with anxiety. As long as she killed Bailey Hongzhuang, she would still have a chance to escape. Because once Bailey Hongzhuang was dead, everything would be settled. As long as she turned around and ran, she believed that Mo Yinjue and the rest would not give up on the temptation of the inheritance and chase after her. Every man for himself, and the heavens take the hindmost. This was everyone's nature. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were as cold as water. Her pretty face was filled with determination. All right, today we'll decide who's the winner. Just as she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Mo Yinjue and said, "Don't worry, I can do it." There were some things that needed to be resolved personally. She wanted to end the enmity between her and Han Shiling on her own. No matter how attractive the inheritance was, to the current her, ending Han Shiling with her own hands was the most important thing. Because, this was her obsession. Hearing this, Mo Yinjue looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. He instinctively wanted to stop Bailey Hongzhuang from doing so. However, when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's determined eyes, the words that he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. In the end, he did not say anything. He once had the same obsession. He wanted to give his all for the sake of his own happiness. Hence, at this moment, he could not refuse. Mo Yinjue stared at Bailey Hongzhuang and nodded, "All right." The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up into an elegant smile. Her gaze then fell upon Han Shiling. She will definitely kill Han Shiling. When Han Shiling saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had really agreed, the joy in his eyes deepened. Bailey Hongzhuang is really digging her own grave. I will definitely make Bailey Hongzhuang regret this. When the surrounding cultivators saw this scene, they sighed deeply in their hearts. What kind of enmity is there between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling? She actually wants to end it with her own hands? I don't know. I'm afraid that it's a deep hatred. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's decision is not very wise. I think that Bailey Hongzhuang has quite a backbone. Cultivators should have such backbone and pride. Even though most of the cultivators felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's decision was very foolish, they also admired Bailey Hongzhuang from the bottom of their hearts. After all, a cultivator should be so unyielding, without the slightest bit of regret. This was the true essence of cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling's eyes met again. Then, almost at the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling did the same action. Chapter 14-18. Bailey Hongzhuang took out pills from her heaven-earth bag. She wanted to fight Han Shiling for the last round. This round would determine life and death as well as victory and defeat. She had always prepared a lot of energy recovery pills. The most common situation that cultivators encountered outside was the exhaustion of their yuan power. Therefore, the consumption of energy recovery pills was extremely fast. Normally, when they were rushing between cities, the qi recovery pill was a medicinal pill that they often used. Therefore, she had already prepared enough energy recovery pills long before she participated in the assessment competition. Han Shiling's situation was needless to say. As the granddaughter of the Tiangong sect's great elder, she had always had a lot of cultivation resources, not to mention the fact that she needed pills very much on a daily basis. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling ate the pills as if they were eating jelly beans. They did not care at all. Seeing this scene, everyone felt somewhat helpless in their hearts. Pills were extremely precious to them. Usually, they would try their best to use them sparingly. It was impossible for them to eat the pills as if they were eating jelly beans like Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling. As expected of a member of a sect. The amount of cultivation resources they have is really enviable. I wonder what Bailey Hongzhuang's identity is. Looking at her, her identity should not be any worse than Han Shiling's. But I've never heard of Bailey Hongzhuang's name. The crowd looked at each other. They knew some of the famous cultivators in each sect. Just like Han Shiling's name, they had at least heard of it. However, the name Bailey Hongzhuang was really unfamiliar to them. Han Shiling's expression turned ugly when he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation resources were not any less than his. Bailey Hongzhuang, I didn't expect you to get so many cultivation resources from Big Brother D. Han Shiling's eyes were filled with disgust. With Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, it was impossible for her to have so many cultivation resources. Needless to say, she knew that this must have been arranged by Brother D. Whenever she thought of how well Big Brother D treated Bailey Hongzhuang, she would go crazy with jealousy. Bailey Hongzhuang was too lazy to explain to Han Shiling. She had always only explained things to those she cared about. As for those she didn't care about, she didn't care at all what they thought. Are you envious? Bailey Hongzhuang smirked and looked at Han Shiling playfully. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Han Shiling's face instantly turned ugly. She didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so calm. Speaking of which, whenever she and Bailey Hongzhuang argued, Bailey Hongzhuang would say something that would anger her to death. It was really infuriating. Then you should enjoy it. This is your last chance in life. You talk too much nonsense. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Shiling impatiently and then retracted her gaze. After taking the energy recovery pill, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a wave of energy quickly enter her body and replenish her energy center, which was almost depleted of primary energy. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't waste any more time. The primary energy in her body quickly surged out. As her hands moved, an increasingly strong force spread out. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had begun to move, Han Shiling didn't delay any longer. After this move, Bailey Hongzhuang would die in her hands. Chapter 14-19. Gradually, the speed at which Han Shiling's hands moved became faster and faster. The golden light in her hands became denser and denser, sparkling with a dazzling and enchanting light. However, what everyone cared about was not how beautiful the light was. What they felt was the power that made their hearts palpitate. This power was even more shocking than when Han Shiling had displayed the 9 dark phoenix finger. Golden Wool Crescent Moon. Han Shiling shouted coldly. Her almond-shaped eyes were filled with a vicious light as she stared fixedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. It was as if she wanted to annihilate Bailey Hongzhuang along with the Golden Wool Crescent Moon. Under the crowd's astonished gazes, a golden crescent moon slowly rose from behind Han Shiling and appeared in midair. Even the radiance of the sun seemed to be blocked by this crescent moon. It was different from the usual gentleness of the moon. The crescent moon that Han Shiling had condensed was even sharper and more threatening, causing people to tremble in fear. Han Shiling's face was extremely pale. This Golden Wool Crescent Moon was a martial technique that she had only recently mastered. Its power was extremely powerful. However, with her current cultivation, she was unable to fully display the power of this Golden Wool Crescent Moon. She could only display a portion of its power. However, even so, it was enough. Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely regret making her an enemy. However, this ending was destined to be irreversible. When Han Xiling was displaying her martial technique, Bailey Hongzhuang was also displaying her martial technique rapidly. The crowd stared in shock at the dazzling speed at which Bailey Hongzhuang was condensing her hand seals. They could only see an aqua-blue seal that constantly deepened and changed. However, they could not see how Bailey Hongzhuang was moving. Under such a high frequency of condensation, Bailey Hongzhuang's fair and thin hand began to show traces of blood. This was because the speed of condensation was too fast. Looking at this scene, the crowd was secretly speechless. It was their first time witnessing such a scene when forming a seal. However, just from the complexity of the hand seals, everyone could tell that this move of hers was not simple. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's hand seals changed, and a scalp-numbing aura spread out. Immediately after, a black lotus flower appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang. The black demonic lotus spun slowly and emitted a mysterious and profound power. The black demonic lotus rotated and slowly opened. A trace of red appeared in the center of the black demonic lotus. The intertwining of black and red revealed an indescribable magic. A faint smell of blood quietly spread, causing people to think of Bailey Hongzhuang's hand that was dripping with blood. An energy that was not the slightest bit weaker than the golden wool mysterious moon swept out, instantly dyeing the golden sky with a touch of black. The originally bright sky was now occupied by two colors, black and gold. No one was willing to give way to the other. High Heaven Devil Lotus. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was cold. Her beautiful face was as pale as paper, which made her pair of pitch-black eyes seem even more bottomless. Feeling the martial technique that Bailey Hongzhuang was displaying, Han Xiling's expression changed a little. This was because she could feel the shocking energy contained in Bailey Hongzhuang's martial technique. Her cold almond eyes were filled with doubt. She had never heard of this High Heaven Devil Lotus before. It should not be a martial technique of Tiangang's sect. In this way, she could not figure it out. Chapter 1420. This kind of martial skill, just from its power, could be judged that its power was definitely not ordinary. You know, it was not easy for her to get the golden wool profound moon. The higher the level of the martial skill, the more difficult it was to practice, and it was not easy to get it. Even if there were a lot of martial skills in Tiangang's sect, if you wanted to practice high-level martial skills, you also needed to have a certain level of authority. Even with the identity of Bewitching, some of the extremely great martial skills could not be leaked to cultivators outside the sect. Where did Bailey Hongzhuang get her hands on this level of martial arts? The level of the previous Azure Flame Holy Palm was already not low. She thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had used her strongest move, but she did not expect that there was a stronger move. She had previously learned about the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang. She was just an unloved young lady of a small dynasty. It was too strange for her to have this level of martial skill. Suddenly, Han Xiling's eyes lit up. Maybe it was Mo Yunjue who gave it to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang took out a few qi recovery pills and quickly put them into her mouth. She had forcibly displayed this move, Ling Tian Demon Lotus. All the power in her body was almost drained and dried up. After Xia Jiqing and the others saw Bailey Hongzhuang display a martial skill that they had never seen before, their eyes were filled with amazement. They never knew when Bailey Hongzhuang had practiced this martial skill. Just by looking at the power of this martial skill, they could understand that it was definitely not easy to practice it. Speaking of which, Bailey Hongzhuang's background was more than they imagined. However, after a short surprise, Xia Jiqing and the others were more worried about the safety of Bailey Hongzhuang. Han Xiling's move seemed to be extremely simple. After this collision, the final result was really unpredictable. Boss won't be in danger? Xia Jiqing's eyes were filled with worry. She had successfully killed a cultivator with the help of Bai Junyu. Bai Junyu frowned as he looked at the confrontation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling. He was unable to determine the outcome of such a fierce battle. Bai Junyu immediately noticed that Mo Yunjue was also paying attention to the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling. With Mo Yunjue's strength, he shouldn't let anything happen to Hongzhuang. Bai Junyu said. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing also looked at Mo Yinjue. Sure enough, Mo Yinjue was frowning at this scene. Just from the way he stood, it was clear that Mo Yinjue was ready to act. The moment something happened to boss Missouri Yinjue would definitely take action. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing was relieved a little. At least, Mo Yinjue was stronger than them. Bailey Hongzhuang, die. Han Xiling snorted coldly. With a thought, the Black Moon attacked Bailey Hongzhuang fiercely. Damn it, it's you. Bailey Hongzhuang also did not retreat. With a wave of her hand, the demon lotus flew towards the Black Moon. Boom! A thunderous sound resounded through the sky, and an extremely terrible Yuanli storm formed in the air. The originally bright sky became dark at the moment of the collision. The space of the whole world seemed to be completely distorted at this moment. The earth-shaking power made people tremble. Chapter 1421. The cultivators from the Qinrun Empire and the Myriad Cloud Empire who were originally fighting stopped after seeing such a terrifying energy collision and quickly retreated. Once this kind of energy raged, the power was extremely powerful. None of them wanted to be affected by such an aftermath, so they could only stop. However, after seeing the terrifying battle fluctuations of Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling, everyone didn't know what to say. The energy that erupted from the two women was so amazing. As a cultivator of the Tiangang sect, Han Xiling's combat power was not enough to surprise people. But in the end, who was this Bailey Hongzhuang? Her attack power was actually so strong, it was simply too amazing. Since when did the cultivators from a medium-sized empire become so powerful? This kind of combat power is very amazing even in a large empire. Fortunately, we didn't become enemies with them. In the future, we have to be careful when we encounter a team from a medium-sized empire. If we encounter a monster with such a powerful combat power, then we are really unlucky. Feeling the crazy and raging energy, everyone cursed in their hearts. In comparison, the combat power of some large empires was not so terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang is actually so powerful, Bailey Haoxuan was completely dumbfounded. The trash that was bullied by him all day long had now become so powerful. Even he couldn't help but applaud her combat power. If Bailey Hongzhuang was allowed to continue to develop, she might really become a famous figure in the Xingxian continent in the future. Maybe, after the assessment competition, she would become a cultivator of a sect. At that time, the gap between them would really be an insurmountable gap. She is no longer the Bailey Hongzhuang of the past. After this assessment competition, we probably won't see her again. Shen Yuanhuan's voice was filled with faint emotion and melancholy. A genius like Bailey Hongzhuang was not someone that could be retained by Fengbo Empire. The stupidest thing he had done in his life was to give up on Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing Shen Yuanhuan's words, Bailey Haoxuan was slightly taken aback, but he immediately acquiesced. The general's estate treated Bailey Hongzhuang so badly. With Bailey Hongzhuang's current ability, it was indeed possible for her not to return. At this moment, he finally understood why his father was so lonely when Bailey Hongzhuang left. Thinking about it, it was indeed a pity for the general's residence to lose such a great helper. Bailey Hongzhuang might die in this battle. Bailey Haoxuan's eyes flashed with uncertainty. Today's situation was already very obvious. Between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling, one of them must die. It was just that no one was sure who would die in the end. Shen Yuanhuan clenched his fists and stared at the raging darkness in front of him. The battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Xiling was also beyond Mo Yinjue's expectations. He did not expect that the two women would erupt with such terrifying power in the end. In this darkness, it was not easy for him to find Bailey Hongzhuang's location. What's more, the center of the storm was a place that no one dared to approach. The energy raged, the storm swept, and everyone even felt that the earth was shaking. Chapter 1422. The smoke and dust gradually dissipated, the energy gradually calmed down, and the darkness that was shrouded in energy gradually regained its brightness in everyone's sight. However, after seeing the destruction in front of them, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Hiss! In their line of sight, the originally flat ground had become a mess, and in the center of the energy explosion, there was a huge deep pit. Around the deep pit, cracks snaked out, and the ground cracked. The shape was terrifying. The surrounding trees had long been reduced to dust. In fact, even the restriction was showing signs of shattering. Such a terrible destructive power was not seen much on ordinary days. After seeing it at this moment, everyone could not suppress the shock in their hearts. Compared to the other onlookers who were sighing at the power of this destructive power, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had already looked for Bailey Hongzhuang for the first time. They could feel the amazing energy just from the periphery of the raging energy, so how terrifying was Bailey Hongzhuang in the center of the energy explosion? However, Xia Jiqing and the others glanced around and did not find the figure of Bailey Hongzhuang at all. Even the figure of Mo Yinjue had disappeared. Boss! Xia Jiqing immediately walked forward, her pretty face full of worry, and her mouth kept calling the name of Bailey Hongzhuang. She only felt that her heart was squeezed, and she couldn't imagine what they would do if something happened to the boss. Boss! Yuan Xiaoman and Yuan Zhixin also called Bailey Hongzhuang nearby. They believed that Bailey Hongzhuang must be here. Hongzhuang! Dong Xiaoqing, Dong Fengyu, and Bai Junyu's eyes were also full of worry and tension, and they were only praying that Bailey Hongzhuang would not have an accident. The cultivators in Han Shiling's team were also looking for the existence of Han Shiling, but compared to the previous 8-people team, there were only 3 people left. With the strength of Xia Jiqing and the others, they could completely solve these 3 cultivators together. However, in this situation, they were not in the mood to care about these 3 people. Finding Hongzhuang was the most important thing. However, no matter how Xia Jiqing and the others shouted, there was no response. Xia Jiqing's eyes had become red, and a touch of crystal quietly filled her eyes. No, nothing will happen to boss. Dong Xiaoqing and the others were also frantically searching, digging into the ground. If they were buried under the yellow sand, it would not be long before they died. The surrounding cultivators were filled with emotions after witnessing this scene. It seems that both Han Shiling and Bailey Hongzhuang have perished. With such a terrifying collision of energy, you can imagine how powerful the power of the central zone was. These 2 people were so young, and their strength was so great. To think that they fell just like that, it really makes one sigh. Dong Hongyun and Pan Zimo looked at each other. They didn't know what to do in this situation. Something happened to Han Shiling, you're finished. Dong Hongyun looked at Pan Zimo coldly. Although this matter was a conflict between Han Shiling and Bailey Hongzhuang, it was still related to them. Pan Zimo looked at Dong Hongyun angrily. You only know that Han Shiling is a disciple of Tiangang Zong, but you don't know that Bailey Hongzhuang is the wife of the Tiangang Zong's young lord. Whether it's you or me, you think about it. Chapter 1423. After Pan Zimo began to move, Dong Hongyun looked at Pan Zimo's back. His mind kept thinking about what Pan Zimo had said before, and his expression gradually changed. This was really unbelievable. Dong Hongyun's first thought was that Pan Zimo was lying to him. However, thinking of Pan Zimo's changing expression and the confidence he showed when talking to him, he faintly felt that what Pan Zimo said was true. Because Pan Zimo, who wanted to become a disciple of Tiangang's sect, could only restore his spirit with this reason. If Bailey Hongzhuang was really the wife of the young lord of Tiangang's sect, then wouldn't he be done for? At the thought of this, Dong Hongyun's face also became pale. Even if Han Shiling's position in Tiangang's sect was high, it could not be higher than the position of the young lord's wife. The cultivators of the Qin Run dynasty looked at Dong Hongyun's constantly changing face, and their eyes showed doubts. They didn't know what Pan Zimo said to Dong Hongyun that could make Dong Hongyun's face change. Dong Hongyun finally believed what Pan Zimo said, and immediately waved his hand and said, "Quick, let's find Bailey Hongzhuang together." Hearing this, the cultivators of the Qin-run dynasty couldn't help but ask, "Captain, if we find Bailey Hongzhuang, are we going to kill her?" "Kill your head. Why don't you kill yourself?" Dong Hongyun said angrily, "Hurry up and find Bailey Hongzhuang, so that you don't have to apologize." As soon as these words came out, the cultivators of the Qin-run dynasty were stunned. They wanted to ask the reason, but Dong Hongyun had already started to move. Seeing this, they didn't dare to delay any longer and immediately started to search. "Boss!" Xia Jiqing kept shouting, and kept telling herself that nothing would happen to the boss. She held back the tears in her eyes and didn't let them fall. At this moment, there was some movement on the ground not far from Xia Jiqing. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing immediately rushed over, and her hands kept digging the soil. "Boss, is that you?" Xia Jiqing's face was red, and her hands were trembling because of nervousness. When she dug into the soil, her nails overflowed with blood, but she didn't seem to feel it at all. After Gong Shaoqing and the others saw Xia Jiqing's actions, they also came to help. Under the joint efforts of everyone, a hand finally appeared in everyone's sight. However, this hand did not belong to Bailey Hongzhuang. It was a man's hand. After seeing the man's hand, Xia Jiqing and the others were stunned for a moment. Yuan Xiaoman immediately reacted and said, "This must be young Master Mo." Cough, cough. Mo Yinjue kept fiddling with the dirt on his head and finally appeared in front of everyone. "Young Master Mo, do you know where boss is?" Ignoring Mo Yinjue's current situation, Xia Jiqing immediately asked about Bailey Hongzhuang's situation. "I'm here." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice followed, and Xia Jiqing and the others were ecstatic. This at least proved that the boss was fine. However, this voice seemed to come from Mo Yinjue's side. "Chi!" Mo Yinjue's figure swept and his whole person directly jumped out of the ground. The soil on top of his head was too thick, and it was not easy for him to exert his strength. After Mo Yinjue jumped out of the deep pit, he immediately went down. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure also appeared in front of everyone. "Boss!" Chapter 1424. They saw that Mo Yinjue's black robe was covered with dust at the moment. Compared to his handsome appearance before, the current Mo Yinjue was a bit embarrassed. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was pale, and her clothes were stained with blood, but the dust on her body was much less than Mo Yinjue's. After seeing this scene, everyone quickly understood. Before, it was Mo Yinjue who blocked Bailey Hongzhuang's body, so Bailey Hongzhuang's body was relatively clean. Bai Junyu and the others looked at Mo Yinjue with a bit of complexity. Before, they had noticed that Mo Yinjue had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's battle, ready to protect her at any time. They didn't expect that after the battle broke out, Mo Yinjue really protected Bailey Hongzhuang. "Boss, how are you? I was scared to death just now." Xia Jiqing's voice revealed a bit of a sob. She had never been so nervous. After not getting the news of the boss, she only felt that her whole person didn't know how to think. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. "Although I suffered some injuries, the injuries are not too serious." Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. Just now, with such a tyrannical energy clash, how could Bailey Hongzhuang not be injured? However, Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth. The injuries on her body were all caused when she dealt with Han Shiling's Nine Phoenix Finger. Later, when she used the Ling Tian Demon Lotus, all the Yuan Qi in her body was exhausted, so she was not injured. At that time, she only felt darkness in front of her, and all the sand flew up. Then, she fell into an embrace. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately looked at Mo Yinjue. "Mo Yinjue, how are your injuries?" She was not injured because Mo Yinjue protected her. With such a terrifying energy impact, presumably Mo Yinjue's injuries were also very serious. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, the eyes of the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators fell on Mo Yinjue, and their eyes showed the same color of worry. "Young Master Mo, where are you injured?" Mo Yinjue waved his hand slightly, "It's nothing." Hearing this, everyone looked at Mo Yinjue with a slightly surprised look. Could it be that Mo Yinjue's strength was strong enough, so the impact just now did not have much impact on him? What's more, from Mo Yinjue's calm look, they couldn't see the slightest difference in the slightest. "Young Master Mo, Miss Bailey, it's great that you're all right." Pan Zimo hurried over after seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yinjue were safe and sound. His handsome face was filled with a joyful smile. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, "Thank you for your concern." When the other cultivators saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yinjue were safe and sound, their hearts were also filled with sorrow. "I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so powerful. Han Xiling still hasn't been found. It seems that Bailey Hongzhuang has won this battle. Tiangang sect's Han Xiling actually couldn't defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. In the future, I must find out what kind of person Bailey Hongzhuang is." This battle was really impressive, the result was also unexpected. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest who were so happy, the three cultivators in Han Xiling's team felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar at this moment. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were so powerful, and the two demonic beasts that suddenly appeared were also extremely powerful. Chapter 1425. Pan Zimo placed a hand on Mo Yinjue's shoulder. "Young Master Mo, you're really amazing. You've done a great job as her bodyguard." However, when Pan Zimo's hand came into contact with Mo Yinjue's back, he felt a burst of pain, and his brows furrowed. Pan Zimo retracted his hand, only to discover that his hand was covered in blood. Gong Shaoqing and the rest who were originally in a good mood were stunned when they saw this scene. Upon closer inspection, they discovered that Mo Yinjue's back was covered in blood, but because he was wearing a black brocade robe, it was not obvious. "Mo Yinjue, you're injured." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed, and she quickly walked over to Mo Yinjue's side, only to discover that Mo Yinjue's back was stained red with blood. Previously, Mo Yinjue had used his body to protect her, and his back must have suffered a very serious injury. Mo Yinjue waved his hand, his expression as cheerful as ever. "It's nothing, such a small injury won't kill me." "Young Master Mo, your injuries are so serious, why aren't you applying medicine?" Yuan Xiaoman was extremely worried after regaining her senses. Such a serious injury, and Mo Yinjue was still saying that it was a small injury? Looking at Mo Yinjue in such a state, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but recall the scene when she had first met Mo Yinjue. At that time, Mo Yinjue had also suffered a very serious injury, and if he had not met her, he would not have been able to keep his life. However, even under such intense pain, Mo Yinjue's face was still filled with an indifferent smile, as if the person who was injured was not him. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly took out a healing pill and fed it to Mo Yinjue. Before she had taken part in the assessment, Bewitching had given her a few more precious pills. Facing such a Mo Yinjue, she felt a little helpless, and her heart was filled with guilt and gratitude. She should have been the one to bear these injuries, but Mo Yinjue had helped her bear them. If Mo Yinjue had not protected her at the critical moment, she would have been in a terrible situation. After all, Han Xiling was an extremely famous cultivator in Tiangang sect. His combat power was also extremely strong. It was more difficult to deal with him than she had imagined. Mo Yinjue stared intently at Bailey Hongzhuang. When he saw the worry in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, a hint of a smile appeared in his deep, handsome eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang took out her own medicine and said to Dongfang Yu, "Sprinkle this medicine on his wound." As a cultivator, it was unavoidable for them to get injured. Thus, golden sore ointment was especially important. This was the Bailey family's famous golden sore ointment. It was extremely effective and could stop the bleeding immediately. Dongfang Yu nodded slightly, and directed Mo Yinjue to take off his clothes. When everyone saw Mo Yinjue's muscular upper body, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. On Mo Yinjue's body, the scars were especially eye-catching. On his chest, there was a terrifying and winding wound that almost split his body into two. Even Gong Shaoqing and the others couldn't help but exclaim after seeing this scene. With so many injuries, what exactly did Mo Yinjue go through? Even the mercenaries who lived a life of licking blood from the edge of the blade wouldn't have as many scars as Mo Yinjue. Dongfang Yu didn't delay any longer and immediately sprinkled the golden sore ointment on Mo Yinjue's injured back. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice rang out, "It will hurt a little when applying the golden sore ointment, but the effect is very good." Chapter 1426. After seeing Mo Yinjue's strong endurance, everyone could not help but admire him. Just by looking at the scars on Mo Yinjue's body, Mo Yinjue had already become an iron-blooded man in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang checked the injuries on Mo Yinjue's back and saw that Mo Yinjue's back was covered in blood. She was afraid that there would be another deep scar. Fortunately, Mo Yinjue had used his elemental energy to protect his body, so it was not fatal. However, such a serious injury would require a period of time to completely recover. "Thank you." Bailey Hongzhuang gazed at Mo Yinjue, her clear eyes filled with sincerity and gratitude. Mo Yinjue laughed lightly, "You saved my life back then, now I'm saving yours. You don't have to take it to heart." Looking at Mo Yinjue's nonchalant look, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was touched. This was not the first time Mo Yinjue had said this to her. If they really counted, she had saved him back then, and he had told her about Baisher's identity, so they were even. Later on, when she was attacked by an assassin, Mo Yinjue had appeared and helped her once. In the Qing dynasty, when they had a conflict in the restaurant, Mo Yinjue had helped her once again. During the inter-school competition, Missouri Yinjue had stood up and helped her as well. And now, Mo Yinjue had helped her once again. She already owed Mo Yinjue too much. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not say all this out loud. She just quickly helped Mo Yinjue treat his wounds. If she did not treat and bandage it now, once the wound became infected, it would become worse. And while Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were concerned about Mo Yinjue's injuries, Han Shiling's team had also found Han Shiling. However, they only found Han Shiling's body. No matter how they tried to call out to Han Shiling still stopped breathing. Qin Yangbing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. He could not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang had really killed Han Shiling with her own strength. There was clearly a two-stage difference in strength between them, and Han Shiling's combat power was far beyond that of an ordinary cultivator. Under such circumstances, Han Shiling still lost. How strong was Bailey Hongzhuang's talent? At this moment, Qin Yangbing could not help but think of Di Beichen. Perhaps, from the beginning to the end, Di Beichen's judgment had never been wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang, the great elder knows that you've killed Bailey Hongzhuang. He will never let you off. Qin Yangbing stared coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Long before they had taken part in the assessment, the great elder had instructed them to protect Han Shiling. If anything happened to Han Shiling, they would be completely finished. Now that Han Shiling had fallen, their future was hopeless. Seeing that Qin Yangbing still dared to hoot at a time like this, Yuan Jixin and the others' faces turned cold and they immediately rose to their feet. They wanted to capture Qin Yangbing and the others in one fell swoop and not leave a single one alive. No matter how the great elder believed that Bailey Hongzhuang had killed Han Shiling, as long as there was no evidence, everything would be meaningless. Hence, they must not leave a single witness behind to cause trouble for Bailey Hongzhuang in the future. "Master, leave it to us," Xiao He and Xiao Bai said in unison. These loathsome fellows were about to disappear from their sight. Chapter 1427. Bailey Hongzhuang took out a bag of needles from her Qiankuan bag. Even though Mo Yinjue's back injury was very serious, she was still able to accurately pinpoint the location of his acupuncture points. This injury was very serious and she needed to stimulate the acupuncture points. On one hand, it would allow Mo Yinjue's injury to heal faster, and on the other hand, it would prevent the injury from worsening. When the surrounding cultivators saw Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly take out a few silver needles, their eyes filled with suspicion. They didn't know what Bailey Hongzhuang was trying to do. When Imo Yinjue saw the silver needles in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, his handsome face broke into a faint smile. Thinking back to when Bailey Hongzhuang had first used the silver needles to cure his poison, he didn't understand. But now, he finally understood. Speaking of which, Bailey Hongzhuang was the first and only person who had used the silver needles to treat him. However, he was full of admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills. Back then when his injury was so serious and he thought that he was going to die, Bailey Hongzhuang was actually able to pull him back from the gates of hell. This medical skill was really amazing. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was treating Imo Yinjue's injuries, Dong Hongyun and the rest had already slowly walked over to Bailey Hongzhuang and Imo Yinjue's side. Seeing Dong Hongyun and the rest, Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed and her charming face was filled with vigilance and coldness. Imo Yinjue's gaze also fell onto Dong Hongyun and the rest. If Dong Hongyun and the rest had any ill intentions, he would definitely attack at the first moment. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang and Imo Yinjue's expressions, Dong Hongyun's face immediately revealed a fawning smile. "Miss Bailey, young Master Imo, previously I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I shouldn't have gone against you. I hope that you can be magnanimous and forgive us for our previous mistakes." Dong Hongyun's smile was flattering. What a joke, Bailey Hongzhuang was Tiangang sect's young master's wife. Even if he was given 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to go against her. Otherwise, once the assessment competition was out, he would only have a dead end. Now, he only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't bear a grudge against him for his previous actions. Only in this way would he be able to achieve something in the future. Seeing Dong Hongyun's attitude had a 180-degree change. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes couldn't help but be surprised. Compared to Dong Hongyun's attitude before, this attitude was a completely different person. Was it just because Han Shiling's team lost? Even so, Bailey Hongyun's Bailey Hongzhuang's. They Hongzhuang Jianqiu they Hongzhuang Yao Hongzhuang. To Hongzhuang to Hong. To Hongzhuang. After participating in the assessment competition for so long, they had never seen Hongzhuang Jianqiu like this. It was too damaging to the dignity of Hongzhuang Jianqiu. However, they didn't object to Hongzhuang Jianqiu's actions. With Hongzhuang Jianqiu's pride, Hongzhuang Jianqiu's and Imo Yinjue's identities were very impressive. They couldn't afford to offend them at all. Imo Yinjue's deep and dark eyes flashed with a touch of understanding. He casually glanced at Dong Hongyun and then shifted his gaze. He didn't care about a guy like Dong Hongyun. As for the so-called apology, he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. After seeing Imo Yinjue's nonchalant attitude, Dong Hongyun's expression became a little awkward. He could only place his hopes on Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1428. At this point, Dong Hongyun had already let go of all his self-esteem. The law of survival in the Xingxian continent was the survival of the fittest. In front of the strong, all self-esteem and persistence were meaningless. Only survival was the most important. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Dong Hongyun indifferently. In fact, the Qinrun dynasty only had a grudge with the Myriad Cloud dynasty. She had no grudge with them. She only thought that Dong Hongyun had such an attitude because he knew that Imo Yinjue's identity was not simple. Therefore, she did not say anything. After all, she could not make the decision for Imo Yinjue. When the Qinrun dynasty's cultivators saw that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have any reaction, their faces became particularly awkward. They stood there blankly, not knowing what to do. Dong Hongyun's face flashed with a look of struggle. Then, as if he had made a decision, he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a bright and determined gaze. "I will take responsibility for my own actions. This conflict was entirely caused by me. If Miss Bailey is not willing to forgive me, then let me bear all of this alone. Don't implicate my teammates." Dong Hongyun's gaze was firm. In this situation, since he could not be forgiven, then at least he could not implicate his teammates. Seeing Dong Hongyun's attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but have a higher opinion of Dong Hongyun. To be able to make such a decision, this proved that Dong Hongyun was a real man. However, Dong Hongyun seemed to have put the problem on her. Mo Yunjue looked at Dong Hongyun, then said to Bailey Hongzhuang, "What's your decision?" Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly, showing a trace of confusion. "I'll decide?" Mo Yunjue nodded slightly. "This is your choice." When the Qinrun dynasty's cultivators saw that Dong Hongyun wanted to bear all of this for them, they immediately objected. "Captain, you can't do this. This is the decision of our entire team. How can you take all of this on yourself?" Dong Hongyun frowned. "Stop arguing. I'll take responsibility for what I said." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the unity of the Qinrun dynasty, and her eyes were filled with admiration. Although what Dong Hongyun and the others had done before was somewhat despicable, it was not incomprehensible. After all, it was every man for himself. "As long as you don't become enemies with us in the future, I won't find trouble with you." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. She didn't like to take the initiative to look for trouble, but she had no choice but to deal with some troubles that came to her. Since the cultivators of the Qinrun dynasty regretted their actions, she did not need to be calculative. It wouldn't be easy for a large empire's team to get rid of them completely. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was like the sound of nature in the ears of Dong Hongyun and the others. Dong Hongyun originally thought that he would not be able to escape this calamity in the future, but when he suddenly heard Bailey Hongzhuang's voice, he could not help but be stunned. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment, only suspecting that he had misheard. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent, and the corner of her lips curled into a faint smile. No matter what, today's battle had really saved them a lot of trouble. Han Shiling had been completely dealt with, and the immortal spiritual herbs had also fallen into their hands. This was a really rich harvest. Chapter 1429. "Thank you, Miss Bailey." Dong Hongyun's handsome eyes flashed with a grateful light. Because of Bailey Hongzhuang's words, his mood had risen from hell to heaven. "Thank you, Miss Bailey." The Qinrun dynasty's cultivators spoke out. The previous dissatisfaction with Bailey Hongzhuang had completely disappeared at this moment, leaving only gratitude. When the cultivators present saw the Qinrun dynasty's cultivators suddenly thanking Bailey Hongzhuang, their eyes were filled with doubts. Did I see it wrong? The Qinrun dynasty's cultivators are actually begging Bailey Hongzhuang for mercy? With the strength of the Qinrun dynasty's team, there is no need to beg Bailey Hongzhuang for mercy. What is going on? Bailey Hongzhuang dared to kill Han Shiling. It is very likely that her identity is more powerful than Han Shiling, so the Qinrun dynasty did this. As the crowd continued to discuss, some of the smarter cultivators had already figured out where the problem lay. It seemed that this unknown Tiangang dynasty's cultivator was a very powerful figure and must not be offended. Bailey Hongzhuang's acupuncture was very fast, and with the help of Yuanli, everything went smoothly. "Okay," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, "be careful during this time, try not to touch the wound." Mo Yunjue nodded slightly, took out a black shirt from his Chenkuan bag and put it on again. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, Xia Jiqing, and the others were also not slow. After Bailey Hongzhuang helped Mo Yunjue treat his wound, they also finished dealing with Xin Yangbing and the others and took their Chenkuan bags directly. Pan Zimo slowly walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Miss Bailey, this immortal spirit grass is for you." At this point, he had already given up on the immortal spirit grass. A stalk of immortal spiritual grass allowed him to get acquainted with Tiangang sect's young sect leader's wife. How fortunate was this? Bailey Hongzhuang's clear and bright eyes were filled with joy as she looked at the immortal herbs that were growing extremely well in front of her. "Thank you." Bailey Hongzhuang received the immortal spiritual herb and placed it in her Chenkuan bag. It was rare to see such a treasure. Based on her judgment of this stalk of immortal spiritual grass, its medicinal power should be enough to concoct 2 life-saving pills. This was a great guarantee for cultivators. This should have been Miss Bailey's to begin with. Pan Zimo's face was filled with smiles. Although he did not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang, who was the young sect master's wife, would take part in the assessment, but as long as he could get to know her and leave a good impression, that would be enough. Xia Jiqing and the others handed their Qianquan bags to Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Boss, the restriction has disappeared, we can move on." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her eyes falling on Mo Yinjue. Mo Yinjue's injuries were very serious, and moving too fast was obviously not good for his injuries. When the other cultivators saw that the restriction had dissipated, they all rushed forward. They had no hope for this immortal spiritual grass, but there must be other treasures in front of the ruins. They had to speed up, maybe the treasure would be theirs. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Mo Yinjue immediately understood Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts. Chapter 1430. With Mo Yinjue's words falling, Xia Jiqing and the others' faces were also filled with a touch of understanding. "No, let's go together," Bailey Hongzhuang said firmly, not allowing any refusal at all. Mo Yinjue was injured because of her. The person who should have been seriously injured should have been herself. Now how could she leave Mo Yinjue here alone? What's more, there were dangers everywhere in the ruins. Mo Yinjue was alone and seriously injured. It was extremely dangerous. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xia Jiqing and the others and said, "You go quickly, Mo Yinjue and I will stay behind." "Boss, you said that if we go together. How can we go alone?" Xia Jiqing was the first to express that they were a team and would never be separated. Gong Shaoqing and the others nodded. "Jiqing is right, we go together. The inheritance in the ruins is very precious. Don't miss this opportunity to improve." Bailey Hongzhuang looked serious. Entering the ruins was a rare resource. If they missed it, they would regret it for life. If they could get the inheritance of the master of the ruins, then their path would be completely different. With her current physical condition, even if she went, she would not be able to compete with other cultivators, so it was not a pity to give up. After the fight with Han Shiling, her internal injuries were not light, and it would take a while for her to recover. However, Gong Shaoqing and the others had obviously not been affected by the battle, and they might even get the inheritance. If they missed it like this, it would be a pity. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also understood Bailey Hongzhuang's idea and immediately said, "The master is right, you go quickly." However, Xia Jiqing and the others did not change their attitude because of Bailey Hongzhuang's words, and continued, "Boss, don't think so much. We were able to get the treasure in the stone room before, and it was already worth it. Even if we go now, we may not be able to obtain the inheritance. If we leave them here, we will feel uneasy." Yuan Jixin's face was filled with seriousness and persistence. His life was saved by Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang, he would have long disappeared from this world. Therefore, no inheritance or treasure was more important to him than Bailey Hongzhuang's kindness. Xia Jiqing and the others nodded. Yuan Jixin is right. "Boss, let's move on. Even if there is nothing, it doesn't matter." Seeing everyone's attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang was touched. After thinking for a moment, she nodded. "All right then." Bailey Hongzhuang helped Mo Yinjue up. "Let's slow down and move forward. If you feel uncomfortable, you must tell me." Mo Yinjue's deep black eyes rippled with a strange luster. The Big Dipper Dynasty's team was truly surprisingly united. "I will." Mo Yinjue chuckled. Sometimes, some treasures were not as precious as the friendship of sharing trials and tribulations. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others set off, the other cultivators had already rushed forward like the wind, and Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were at the bottom. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had indifferent and free smiles on their faces. For them now, friendship was the most important. Chapter 1431. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others moved forward. Because their speed had slowed down, the distance between them and the other cultivators was getting bigger and bigger. In the end, they were the only ones left on the road. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. On the contrary, in this empty forest, there was no danger. It was just a group of people, so it was a good experience. Today, we finally solved the big problem of Han Shiling. When I think about it, my mood is not ordinary. Xia Jiqing's face could not hide the excitement. Before, Han Shiling was so arrogant in front of them. Even in Tiangang's sect, he kept finding trouble with them. She was afraid that Han Shiling would never think that he would die in their hands. The Great Elder arranged for Han Shiling to participate in the assessment competition so that he could take advantage of this opportunity to solve me. I don't know how wonderful the Great Elder's expression will be after he finds out that his granddaughter died in the assessment competition. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a playful light. At first, Han Shiling did not have the intention to participate in the assessment competition, but later he suddenly participated. Thinking about it carefully, one could guess the reason. The Great Elder must be protecting his granddaughter everywhere. Wu Yuexin and the others were so determined to stand by Han Shiling's side. The Great Elder must be the reason. However, the Great Elder must not have thought that Han Shiling would die in the small world. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Dongfang Yu and the others' faces all showed interesting smiles. That old man is not a good person. Now that his wishful thinking has been ruined, I think he will collapse. Xia Jiqing smiled proudly. She hated the Great Elder the most. He knew that Han Shiling had no chance, but he still wanted to help Han Shiling get all of this. She was very clear about how deep the relationship between Boss and Bewitching was. It was a pity that some people just did not want to see it clearly and caused so much trouble. Hongzhuang, the matter of Han Shiling dying in the small world, the Great Elder will definitely pin it on you. Even if there is no evidence, he will still hate you to the core. You have to be careful. Gong Shaoqing's eyes flashed with wisdom and seriousness. As far as he knew, the Great Elder only had one granddaughter, Han Shiling. All these years, he had doted on Han Shiling a lot. Once Han Shiling died, the First Elder would definitely fall into paranoia and blame Bailey Hongzhuang for all the problems. With First Elder's power in Tiangang's sect, I'm afraid he'll cause a lot of trouble. Even though Di Beichen was protecting Bailey Hongzhuang, no one knew what the First Elder would do. Just from the fact that the First Elder arranged for Han Shiling to participate in the assessment competition and wanted to understand Bailey Hongzhuang through the assessment competition, it could be seen how dark the First Elder's mind was. As soon as these words came out, the hearts of Xia Jiqing and the others also became heavy. The existence of such an enemy was a troublesome thing after all. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, her beautiful face showing indifference and calmness. I will be more careful. At this time, Yuan Xiaoman seemed to suddenly think of something and said, we haven't seen Wu Yuexin yet. After Mo Yunjue destroyed Wu Yuexin's cultivation base, they did not pay attention to Wu Yuexin in the process of fighting. Chapter 1432. After Wu Yuexin's dantian was destroyed, she was seriously injured and didn't dare to move. As early as when Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling fought, the battle fluctuations had already affected Wu Yuexin. In the following attack, there was no other possibility for Wu Yuexin to die. What's more, with Wu Yuexin's state, even if she survived, she would only die in this assessment. Yuan Xiaoman, who was originally a little worried, was relieved after hearing Dongfang Yu's words. She chuckled and said, so that's how it is. Wu Yuexin, that disgusting guy, is lucky that she died in the aftermath. Otherwise, I will definitely make her suffer. Xia Jiqing's voice was full of disgust. When she thought of Wu Yuexin's disgusting appearance, she had been thinking about how to torture her so that she would learn the lesson of all this. She didn't expect her to die so easily, which made her feel a little pity. Well, since she's already dead, we don't have to pay attention to it. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Their biggest trouble in the assessment had been solved, and their mood was a lot more relaxed. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing and the others' faces showed a smile. They had to say that today was really a very happy day. When they thought of the shocked eyes of the cultivators who were clamoring in front of them when they saw their strength suddenly increase, they felt a burst of joy in their hearts. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others gradually moved forward, a restriction fluctuation in front of them attracted everyone's attention. Taking a closer look, they saw a pale golden restriction rippling like water waves, full of flexibility. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces simultaneously revealed a surprised expression. There was only one restriction in front of them, and the other cultivators had disappeared, so there was only one possibility, to pass through this restriction. Mo Yinjue's eyes condensed on the restriction and said, "This should be the place out of the small world." As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes flashed with a light of understanding. This forest was a small world created by the master of the monument. The reason why they were allowed to come to this small world was for the existence of this medicinal field. Everyone could imagine how many precious medicinal herbs were planted in this medicinal field at the beginning, but unfortunately, only one immortal spiritual grass was left in the end. However, the value of this immortal spiritual grass was enough to shock everyone. "Let's go," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. According to her judgment, this layer of restriction was not dangerous, it was just a kind of isolation effect. After passing through this layer of restriction, they would appear in the palace again. Gong Shaoqing took a step forward and directly passed through the restriction. His body was like a wave of water, disappearing as soon as he passed through. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others moved forward, and when they passed through the restriction, they only felt a strange energy fluctuation, and then they stood in another area. Looking at the dazzling scene in front of them again, everyone sighed in their hearts. It seemed that Mo's judgment was right, they were really in a small world was a small world. I don't know what the final inheritance of the master of the monument is. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with curiosity. Although she knew that this inheritance should not be with them, she also wanted to know what kind of inheritance the master who built such a great monument would leave behind. Chapter 1433. Let's go and have a look. Xia Jiqing smiled. Since it was not too late, they could still go and see the excitement. In this situation, they no longer cared about not being able to get the inheritance. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others gradually approached, a strange scene appeared in front of them. In their line of sight, a very long mirror channel appeared in front of them. The left and right sides of the wall were full of mirrors. Many cultivators stopped in the middle of these two mirrors, not knowing where to go. My God, there are so many mirrors. Xia Jiqing looked at this scene with amazement. She didn't know how many mirrors there were. It was really too surprising. What the hell is this? Even someone as calm as Gong Shaoqing could not remain calm at this moment. What was the purpose of so many mirrors? This is really spectacular. Yuan Jixin's face was full of shock. Such a spectacular scene could only be seen in the ruins. In the past, he had only heard about how shocking the ruins were, and he had never taken it seriously. Now that he had personally experienced it, he knew that all this was true, and it was even more amazing than the rumors. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others approached, many cultivators also noticed their appearance, and their mood could be described as extremely complicated. Originally, they thought that after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were injured, this inheritance was completely out of their reach. Who would have thought that they would be trapped in so many mirrors again? Bailey Hongzhuang looked carefully and found that there was no way out in front of the mirror channel, which meant that the key point was in these mirrors. She just did not know what the purpose of these mirrors was. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were thinking, Pan Zimo had already walked to their side and said, "Bailey Hongzhuang, you are here." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, "Young Master Pan." Pan Zimo's face was filled with a warm smile. "You have just arrived, you should not know the purpose of this mirror channel. Let me introduce it to you." "Thank you, young Master Pan." Bailey Hongzhuang did not refuse. If someone told them the real purpose of the mirror tunnel, they could save some time. In this mirror tunnel, the two opposite mirrors are almost identical, but only one mirror is real. You can pass through it and obtain the final inheritance. If you fail, then you won't have another chance. Pan Zimo slowly spoke, his handsome face revealing a bit of emotion. Previously, there were already cultivators who tried their luck and successfully entered. There were also cultivators who failed and were quickly ejected after entering. After that, they were unable to enter again. Therefore, you must be careful when you choose. You only have one chance. After listening to Pan Zimo's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood. They did not expect the mirror channel to have such a function. In other words, the final inheritance lies behind this mirror? Dongfang Yu asked. Pan Zimo nodded. That's right. Currently, some cultivators have already entered, so we have to hurry. Thank you, young Master Pan. Bailey Hongzhuang expressed her gratitude. With Pan Zimo's explanation, they finally understood. Pan Zimo's smile remained. Miss Bailey is too polite. Chapter 1434. The assessment set by the master of this monument is really unheard of and unseen. This time it's really an eye-opener. Yuan Xiaomon's pretty face couldn't hide the emotion, all of this seemed so magical. This means that if we can't tell which mirror is the real one, even if we blindly guess, there is a 50% chance of getting it right? Xia Jiqing was surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, yes, but everyone doesn't want to lose this opportunity, so they don't dare to blindly guess. This success rate is quite high. If we really can't find it, then we can just blindly guess. Bai Junyu said. Everyone walked to the two mirrors and looked carefully. Everyone found that among all the mirrors, only the two mirrors directly opposite looked exactly the same. The other mirrors would show different patterns on the frame, but they were all a faint golden color, so they all looked the same from a distance. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the two mirrors in front of her. At a glance, the two mirrors were clearly the same. She couldn't see the slightest difference. Master, the master of this monument is too strange. What kind of strange assessment is this? Xiao He couldn't help but complain. It looked left and right in front of the mirror, but it was obviously the same. A mirror was a mirror, what could be different about it? I think the master of this monument particularly likes to find differences. When we opened the stone chamber before, the master of the monument also used this method, and now it's the same method again. It's really strange. Xiao Bai was also helpless. The hobby of the master of this monument was too strange. How could they find out which mirror was the correct one? Bailey Hongzhuang stared at the two mirrors, her ink-black phoenix eyes full of calmness. In this case, being impatient was of no use. This was an extremely meticulous job. The master of the monument is not letting us find differences, but let us find flaws. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Find flaws? Xiao He and Xiao Bai said at the same time. They looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise, not understanding what she meant by looking for flaws. He set up two mirrors that are almost the same, but he asked us to look for the difference. He wanted us to look for the flaw. No matter how perfect the design was, it was still not the same mirror, so there would definitely be flaws. What we need to do is to find that flaw. Bailey Hongzhuang kept looking at the two mirrors in front of her. She could clearly see her appearance in the mirrors. Moreover, the two mirrors were impeccable in terms of refraction and other aspects. She couldn't find any problems at all. This is simply an unsolvable problem. Other than relying on blind guesses, there is no other way to determine it. That's right. What kind of stupid test is this? It's too taxing on the brain. It has nothing to do with cultivation at all. I really don't understand why the owner of the ruins would come up with such a question. The cultivators who couldn't find any difference between the two mirrors after searching for a long time couldn't help but complain. If it was a test of cultivation and strength, they could still give it a try. Even if they lost, they could accept it wholeheartedly. However, under such circumstances, they would lose inexplicably and wouldn't be willing to accept it. Chapter 1435. At first glance, everything in this mirror looked the same, but after taking a closer look, one would notice something different. As long as one did not miss out on any details, one would definitely be able to find it. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at the two mirrors and fell into deep thought. Compared to the previous wall tiles, it was obviously harder to find the difference in this mirror. However, since the owner of the ruins had set this rule, it proved that there must be a way to break it. Where exactly was it? Bailey Hongzhuang stared at the two mirrors, and there was no other expression on her face. Time passed by minute, second by second. Bailey Hongzhuang was still calm and did not become anxious because of the passage of time. In fact, being able to have the opportunity to participate in this assessment was already much better than what they had imagined. She believed that if they were to blindly guess their way in, they would not be able to obtain the final inheritance. At the same time, some cultivators could no longer hold back. Once they made a choice in this mirror where they could not find any problems, this feeling would really drive them crazy. Some cultivators had already chosen to give up on continuing to search and began to make blind guesses. Since they could not find the difference no matter how they searched, they could only make blind guesses in the end. They might as well make blind guesses now. If they guessed correctly, they would be able to obtain the treasure earlier. Therefore, Xiao He and Xiao Bai noticed that a group of cultivators began to try their luck and walk into the mirror. Speaking of which, the most peculiar thing about this mirror was that if a cultivator walked into the mirror and was correct, the next cultivator might not be correct. Under such blind guesses, some cultivators successfully entered, while some cultivators were ejected out dejectedly. The cultivators who were ejected out were unwilling to leave, so they could only continue to stay in the same place, wanting to know what treasure the other cultivators had obtained. As a group of cultivators began to make blind guesses, the other cultivators also began to make blind guesses. For a moment, the number of cultivators in the mirror passage decreased by a lot. Bailey Hongzhuang turned a deaf ear to everything around her, and all her attention was placed on the mirror. After her continuous research, she found that there was no difference between the two mirrors at all. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly stood up. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw Bailey Hongzhuang stand up, they immediately jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. Did Big Boss already know which mirror to choose? The eyes of Xia Jiqing and the others also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, they were also confused. Choose what you want. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke slowly, her clear eyes shining brightly. In fact, she wasn't sure if her idea was right or wrong, but it was the only idea in her mind, so she decided to give it a try. Perhaps there was no difference between the two mirrors at all, and she believed that there was a problem with the mirror, that was the problem with the mirror. She believed that her judgment was not wrong. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang walked directly into the mirror. There was a fluctuation in the mirror, and Bailey Hongzhuang's figure slowly disappeared from everyone's sight. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the scene in front of her, her eyes couldn't help but be filled with an unspeakable shock.
Chapter 1436. Just at first glance, it gave people a very shocking feeling. The stairs were not too high, but the width was extremely surprising. The most shocking thing was that on the heaven stairway, there was a large and solemn black coffin that attracted everyone's attention. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't even have time to sigh that her judgment was really right, her attention had already been attracted by the heaven stairway and the coffin. Could it be, the person lying in the coffin is the master of the monument? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of this idea. In addition to this possibility, she couldn't think of any other possibility. On the heaven stairway, many cultivators were struggling to walk up the heaven stairway, but so far, the highest was only the 50th floor. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully looked at the surrounding situation. In this amazing hall, there was only the heaven stairway. Other than that, there was nothing else. Therefore, the final inheritance of this monument should be on the heaven stairway. This is really shocking. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with a shocked light. If you don't see it with your own eyes, you will never really understand the shock. The master of the monument is really a big deal, it's really amazing. Xiao Bai said with emotion. Bailey Hongzhuang turned and glanced behind. Before, she was not sure whether her judgment was correct or not, so she simply told her judgment to Xia Jiqing and the others. She only hoped that Xia Jiqing and the others could understand her judgment from her words and come here. Xia Jiqing and the others had been waiting. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang enter and not come out again, their faces were filled with joy. Boss made the right choice. She successfully went in. Xia Jiqing's face was full of excitement. As long as the boss was not ejected, it meant that the boss's choice was not wrong. It was really worth being happy. The boss is really amazing. This kind of thing that can't be judged at all, the boss can always find the problem. Yuan Xiaoman's eyes flashed with admiration. Bailey Hongzhuang was really the person she admired the most. Every time he made a decision, it was amazing. She didn't understand why boss was so smart. Mo Yinjue's eyes were filled with a smile. He finally understood why the Beast King had chosen Bailey Hongzhuang as his master. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang's perception was simply too amazing. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was given a certain amount of time, her future achievements would definitely not be bad. The higher one went on the path of cultivation, the higher the requirement for one's comprehension ability. Some powerful martial skills often required extremely high perception to be able to learn them, and Bailey Hongzhuang's current performance had already proven her high perception. Choose what you want. Gong Xiaoqing murmured. Before Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the mirror, she had left such a sentence.
However, what did this mean? These mirrors should all be the same. There is no difference at all. As long as you firmly choose the mirror you believe in, that mirror is the right choice. Mo Yinjue's deep eyes were filled with wisdom. This was also his previous idea, but before he acted, Bailey Hongzhuang had already begun to act. Now it seemed that their judgment was correct. Chapter 1437. Boss, you can even come up with an answer to this kind of question. That's amazing. Yuan Xiaoman, who was originally very confused, was even more impressed after hearing Mo Yinjue's explanation. This was too amazing. It turned out that the question that the owner of the ruins was facing was simply unsolvable. Then, why are some of the other cultivators able to enter and some unable to? Dong Fangyu frowned. This point seemed to be somewhat inexplicable. Everything depends on the cultivator's own beliefs. If they doubt themselves too much, then they won't be able to enter. Once he said this, Gong Xiaoqing and the others all understood. All their questions were answered at this moment. Let's go in as well. Mo Yinjue's gaze fell upon the mirror. Many cultivators had already entered. If they continued to delay, then there would be nothing left. Everyone nodded and immediately walked towards the mirror that they had each chosen. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked towards the stairway to heaven. However, when she entered the range of the stairway to heaven, her delicate and perfect face could not help but reveal a trace of amazement. This was because from the moment she entered the range of the stairway to heaven, a dense wave of elemental energy had surrounded her. If this wave of elemental energy was more powerful than the elemental energy in the small dimension, then it was about 3 times stronger than normal elemental energy. Originally, she still had some injuries in her body, but now that she was in such a rich elemental energy environment, she felt exceptionally comfortable. The demon's summoning scripture had already begun to circulate on its own, absorbing the surrounding elemental energy. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked upwards, and the cultivators above her continued to walk upwards. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang took the second step on the stairway to heaven, she felt a wave of pressure pressing down on her body, making it difficult for her to advance. Seeing this, a trace of suspicion appeared in her ink-black phoenix eyes. She never thought that the stairway to heaven would have such a mysterious problem. It had truly exceeded her expectations. Bailey Hongzhuang looked upwards and discovered that many cultivators were already drenched in sweat. It was extremely difficult for them to even take a step forward. The owner of this ruin is indeed an incredible existence. Just this stairway to heaven alone is already incredible. Bailey Hongzhuang was full of admiration for the owner of the ruins. She had never seen such a stairway before, but she did not know what this stairway was testing. The 100th step didn't seem very high, but from everyone's expression, it was obvious that it was extremely difficult to climb up the 100th step. It was likely that only cultivators who had reached the last step of the celestial stairway would be able to obtain the final inheritance of the master of the ruins. She had seen ancient ruins before, but it was clear that this ancient ruin had given her the deepest shock. Every test of the master of the ruins was extremely special. If one did not have enough comprehension ability, they would not be able to obtain the good treasures inside. Moreover, this ruin didn't have a lot of treasures like other ruins, but each treasure here was very rare. Just this point alone proved that the master of the ruins had high standards and expectations. Everything he left behind was extraordinary. Not only that, but the layout of the ruins also gave people an indescribable feeling of beauty and enjoyment. Master, the stairway to heaven should be more difficult the further you go. It won't be easy to reach the top. Chapter 1438. I'm afraid that the further we go, the greater the pressure will be. It will be extremely difficult to obtain the final inheritance. Xiao Bai sized up the cultivators who were walking at the top. Based on the difficult expressions on the cultivators' faces, she could tell that they were under a lot of pressure. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, but her expression didn't change because of this. The inheritance of the owner of the ruin is not simple. Whoever can reach the end will have to depend on their own abilities. In comparison, the owner of the ruin had never set a dangerous test for them since the beginning. The final test also depended on their own abilities. If they were not powerful enough, it would be their own problem. Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was full of fighting spirit, and a look of admiration appeared in their eyes. No matter when or where, their master was always full of fighting spirit. She would never be frightened by the difficulties in front of her. That was what they admired the most. As a cultivator, the most important quality was not to admit defeat easily. Bailey Hongzhuang did not stay any longer and immediately continued to walk up. Every time she climbed a step, the pressure would increase a little. However, the increase was not huge, and it was completely within the cultivator's range of tolerance. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked up one step after another. Her speed was not slow at all. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang reached the 21st step, she suddenly realized that the pressure on the 21st step had increased abruptly. It was much more than the pressure on the first 20 steps. Under such pressure, her body could not help but sink a little. Upon seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the situation on the stairway again. Only then did she realize that many cultivators had stopped at the same level. After taking a closer look, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly discovered the problem. Most cultivators had stopped at the 20th, 40th, and even 60th steps. It seems that the pressure increases every 20 steps, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. It was easy to determine the situation from the crowd situation. The increase every 20 steps meant that it would be harder to climb towards the end. The difficulty of reaching the final level was probably extremely shocking. So far, the highest person had reached was the 60th floor. Most of the cultivators were still around the 40th floor. This did not mean that they could not withstand such pressure, but under such pressure, the consumption of their physical strength was extremely shocking. Walking from the first floor to the 40th floor, any cultivator who was not physically strong enough would need to rest. Master, the concentration of elemental energy here has also increased. Xiao He's eyes shone brightly. Previously, the 3 times the density of the origin energy was already very shocking. She did not expect that the density of the origin energy would actually reach 4 times the density. This was simply too shocking. Upon hearing Xiao Hei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang finally reacted. Previously, she had focused all her attention on the sudden increase in pressure and did not notice that the density of the elemental energy had increased once again. Could it be that the density of the elemental energy would double after every 20 steps? Bailey Hongzhuang became more and more surprised. If that was really the case, then the situation was too shocking. If that's the case, wouldn't the density of the origin energy at the place where the coffin is at be 7 to 8 times the density? When Xiao Hei said this, he felt that there was a problem with his judgment. Chapter 1439. Not only Xiao Hei, but Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Bai also felt that this possibility was too small. 8 times the density of spirit energy, they had never seen it anywhere. It was too amazing. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to move forward, a familiar voice came from behind. "Boss!" Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and saw Xia Jiqing's figure. Not only Xia Jiqing, but Mo Yinjue and the others also came in almost at the same time. Seeing that everyone had come in, Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was also filled with a happy smile. "You are all here." Xia Jiqing nodded slightly and gave a thumbs up to Bailey Hongzhuang. "Boss, you are still the best. Come up quickly." Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. At the same time, Mo Yinjue and the others' eyes also stayed on the white staircase. Their faces were filled with shock. In fact, no matter who saw such a staircase, they could not help but be shocked because this was an amazing masterpiece. Pan Zimo and Dong Hongfei, who were on the staircase, saw that the entire team of cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty had come in, and their faces could not help but show surprise. Even in their team, only half of the cultivators had managed to make it in. After all, there was a certain probability of this kind of luck, and not everyone's luck could be so good. Under such circumstances, all the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could come in, which proved that there was a difference. Pan Zimo and Dong Hongfei thought of the sentence, "Boss, you are great." Xia Jiqing said before. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang found a way to enter? Although they felt that this possibility was too small, with Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as the young lord of the Tiangang sect, everything seemed not impossible. Anyone who could have such a status must have some skills that others could not have. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang's battle prowess was already very shocking. Now, it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang's perception was definitely not simple. They had already experienced the difficulties of this mirror before. Not to mention that it was different, the two mirrors looked exactly the same. They even paid attention to every curve of the pattern, but the final result was exactly the same. There was no difference. The most important thing was that if this was really the difference that Bailey Hongzhuang had found, it meant that Bailey Hongzhuang had not only found the difference in one mirror, she had also found the difference in several other mirrors. How was this possible? Pan Zimo and Dong Hongyun looked at each other. This was too unbelievable. Under such circumstances, they even forgot about their daily grudges. This was a truly powerful figure. After a short shock, Xia Jiqing and the others began to walk up. After feeling the pressure on their bodies, Mo Yinjue and the others had a strange look on their faces. However, they quickly recovered from their astonishment and continued to head upwards. Bailey Hongzhuang did not continue to move forward after seeing Xia Jiqing and the others coming up. According to her judgment, it was impossible for other cultivators to reach the top of the staircase today. Therefore, they did not need to be too anxious now. Chapter 1440. Xia Jiqing was the first to walk to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. However, when she walked up to the 21st step, she found that the pressure suddenly increased. Even the hand that was originally stretched out to Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to be moving down a little. Why did the pressure suddenly increase so much? Xia Jiqing's face was full of surprise. Under this pressure, she only felt that her body was a lot slower and she was faintly uncomfortable. As Xia Jiqing's voice came out, Gong Shaoqing and the others were also a little mentally prepared, so when they walked up, their bodies did not suddenly press down. According to my judgment, the pressure on the heaven stairway should increase with every 20 steps. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to reach the top. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at the top of the heaven stairway. Originally, when they stood at the bottom of the heaven stairway, they only felt that the 100 steps would not be too difficult for them and that they could walk up with some time. Now it seemed that all of this was not so simple. It would take a lot of time to walk up. Is it possible that there is only one person who can walk up to the 100th step of the heaven stairway? Yuan Xiaoman bent her head to look at the heaven stairway above and asked the doubts in her heart. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. I don't know. We can only try our best to go higher. The power of this layer is richer than the power of the lower 20 steps. If we can go higher, the power will be richer. Even if we cultivate there for a while, it will be of great benefit to us. With the voice of Bailey Hongzhuang falling, Xia Jiqing and the others recovered. They also did not notice this point. The power here is about 3 times richer than the outside world. Gong Shaoqing's eyes were full of amazement. With such a rich power, if they could cultivate here for a while, they should be able to break through soon. Then let's go up quickly. Bai Junyu said with a smile. They did not expect the last inheritance left by the master of the monument to be so domineering. This heaven stairway was an extraordinary existence. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on Mo Yinjue's body, revealing a bit of worry and concern. Mo Yinjue, your injury is very serious. This pressure will damage your injury to a certain extent. In my opinion, you might as well find a place where you can withstand the pressure and sit down to cultivate your body. Under such a rich power, your injury recovery will also speed up a bit. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mo Yinjue nodded slightly and said, I understand. Seeing that Mo Yinjue listened to her words, Bailey Hongzhuang was also relieved. With Mo Yinjue's injuries, it was impossible to recover without half a month's time. As long as they were able to cultivate here, they would be able to cultivate for a few days. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others continued to move forward. As the pressure gradually increased, the energy in everyone's body was squeezed out. The foreheads of the cultivators were covered with sweat. It was obvious that it was very difficult for them to walk. Above them, some of the cultivators had already stopped and started to rest. Some of them cultivated for a period of time before continuing to ascend. Chapter 1441. The wound on Mo Yinjue's back had begun to bleed, and a faint smell of blood filled the air. Bailey Hongzhuang's nose had always been sensitive. After detecting the smell of blood, she immediately looked at Mo Yinjue's back and said, Mo Yinjue, your wound has split open. As soon as these words came out, Xia Jiqing and the others also looked at Mo Yinjue with concern. Mo Yinjue, you should rest here. Mo Yinjue, wait until your injury recovers before you go up. No matter what, your own body is the most important. Everyone looked at Mo Yinjue with concern. As a teammate, Mo Yinjue had long been a part of their team. Although the inheritance was precious, if one's life was gone, then what was the point of it? Mo Yinjue glanced at everyone, then nodded and said, I'll rest here, you can continue up. Seeing that Mo Yinjue had chosen to have a good rest, everyone was relieved. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze still fell on Mo Yinjue's back and said, if you can't bear the pressure on this floor, then cultivate on the next floor. Don't worry. Mo Yinjue nodded slightly and said, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. The reason why the wound split open is because of the sudden increase in pressure. After I get used to the pressure on this floor, I'll be fine. The heavenly energy here is richer, and my wound will recover faster if I cultivate here. Then be careful. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Immediately afterward, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others continued to walk forward. However, as everyone gradually went up, everyone also felt a burst of exhaustion. Walking under such pressure was too exhausting. When they reached the 50th floor, they already felt that their bodies had no strength and could not continue. Not only the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, but the cultivators of the other dynasties were also in the same state. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a bright light. Under such pressure, their physique would gradually improve. This situation was just like the weight training to improve the physical strength. Under such weight for a long time, the strength in the body would gradually be stimulated. As a result, this had great benefits for the cultivator. I can't walk anymore, I want to rest. Xia Jiqing gasped, her face was red, and her body was dripping with sweat. Under such circumstances, every step was extremely difficult. She had already reached her limit by making it this far. Yuan Xiaoman continued to walk up a few more floors before she stopped and sat down on the ground as if she was paralyzed. This kind of pressure was too exhausting, and she felt that her body was about to fall apart. Gong Xiaoqing and the others persisted for more floors, and finally stopped at the 61st floor. The huge pressure completely crushed their will to continue, and after sitting down, they could no longer stand up. Bailey Hongzhuang also stopped at the 61st floor. Her physical strength allowed her to continue moving forward, but because of the internal injuries she suffered before, if she continued to move forward, her injuries would be affected to a certain extent. At present, the density of the spirit energy on this floor was extremely rich. Everything was as she and Xiao He and Xiao Bai had guessed. Every time they reached the 20th floor, the density of the spirit energy would double. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.